Good afternoon, everybody. It's RT here with Hxro Labs to talk about Everest ID. Here's everything you need to know. Why I'm so bullish on it. Why I think, fundamentally speaking, it could be one of the soundest projects in this space. And it seems like the market has yet to really price in sort of the developments that they've had recently. I don't think most people understand the scale and the scope of what they've built. Stay tuned. We've got all that and more, including an exclusive interview with the founder, Bob Reid, coming up in just a moment. Everest ID is a global banking platform that basically allows you to do everything. Now, we've heard about a lot of products like this. You know, we've got swaps, we've got borrow, lend, and credit and all that. The major difference with this platform, well, there's a few, but one of the key differences is the technology underlying it. They've got their own distributed sort of L2 chain called Everchain that is going to be extremely fast and cheap. Now, Everest ID, there's really four parts to this. Now, I caught up with the founder earlier today. He's going to get on here and explain most of this in detail. But real quick, the Everchain, Everwallet, and then their own stable coin that is fully regulated with this license. Okay, so they got their custodian approval, the VFA license from the Maltese Financial Services Authority. There's only a handful of these that have been given out, and Crypto.com is one of the other ones. Fairly notable name with a $5 billion market cap. And what it allows them to do is basically transact globally anywhere in the world. Fiat currencies can come right in, switch over to credit token, and then right back out to any fiat currency you want. And that's going to allow access to this platform from people all over the world fairly cheaply. And that's a huge sort of on-ramp feature that you can expect to see. And they have a partnership with a couple of banks that they've mentioned, and they've got some more coming. And one of those banks is the BRI bank in Indonesia. Now, you can see here real quick on their website, okay, cool, really nice, just a bank. But what is interesting about that is that they have approximately 30 million retail clients that specialize. This bank specializes in small scale and microfinance style borrowing and lending. So when you're talking about numbers like 30 million, and that's just one bank. Now, they are regulated, obviously, these banks all over the world. And one of the big things about Everest ID that gets me excited is because they are creating this sort of KYC identity underpinning many different blockchains potentially in the future. Bob will get into that here in just a little bit. But all these banks, all of this capital around the world, maybe wanting access to crypto, definitely wanting access to the yields that DeFi has to offer. These borrow and lend rates are highest anywhere in the world are in crypto, but they can't onboard without certain regulatory things in place. There are funds, prop traders, what have you, large amounts of capital sitting outside of crypto, and they can't come in without certain regulatory pieces in place. So Everest ID provides that, and that is one of the main reasons why I think that they could get some real traction. Now, to access their services, you need to hold, and then lock up some ID tokens. So it's not necessarily gas fee based and all that. So every single person who wants to participate in this, including the banks themselves, who perhaps have to lock up more to access a certain amount more data, whatever that is, the bigger players, they're going to have larger sizes, amounts of tokens. There's only 800 million tokens that exist right now. Only about 1/8 of that is circulating for a market cap of 89 million, fully diluted, a little closer to 600, 700 million. And that, in my opinion, is relatively small. But let's get to the chart, because you guys know I love to look at charts. If you've been watching the stream, you've been watching the channel, you know that this is an area that I thought was particularly interesting. And as the volume picked up, we thought, okay, we're heading up a little higher. Came into this fib extension level. That was a line in the sand. The bulls couldn't push it past, and we were back down into this really juicy looking reload zone area. Obviously, if we break to new highs, there's some fib extensions, chaos PRZs up in the sky, and this is all just local price action. If these guys manage to get the traction that I expect they could, and they onboard even a fraction of the millions of users that are in some of these banking partners they're going to be coming out with and announcing, that should lead to some fairly, let's say, favorable supply-demand dynamics taking place in the market. And they're partnered with FTX, which is a company and a founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, that we are particularly fond of here at Hxro Labs. So I couldn't help myself. I had to put this video together today to share with all of you what I see in it. So let's go hear from Bob Reid, hear what he has to say. Pleasure to have you here, Bob. Bob Reid, the founder of Everest ID, is here today to share with us about the global banking platform that they've built. Really an all-encompassing platform. It's incredibly robust, kind of covers everything from A to Z globally, licensing in place. There's still a lot of questions around exactly how it all fits together, what it means, and why the people who are talking about it and are bullish on it feel the way that they do. So really happy to have you here today to talk about what you've built.
Thanks for having me. So why don't we jump into it, and I'll just show you why we built what we built and what it's looking like not only today, but going, if you'll, over the next 6-9 months. We call this a platform for user-centric societies, which is literally more than banking and more than even economies, right? It's everything, right? And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we've been working with a bunch of the larger banks and governments around the world, doing everything from eKYC to distribution of subsidies, like for the government of Indonesia, now working with Visa on a few things. And so we started with the idea of a blockchain society, and we modeled this after Estonia, more actually India with Aadhaar plus India stack, right? And it's similar to an e-bank too, which has 4 major components, and we just modified it so that it would be blockchain specific with, for example, identity. So it's private, user controlled with biometrics, right? And that in and of itself is usually a company. We also have a wallet or an account that does fiat or crypto, right? We're licensed for crypto. We partner for fiat, but it's also like a Dropbox too, where you can store your docs or share credentials. So we can do like, here's my proof of address, but you don't get to see anything else about me, for example. And we have a stable coin. So we've been operating as a regulated entity for a couple of years and finalizing our license right now to do programmable money. That is, like, we can take dollars or euros or pesos in and program them to be anything. Like, you want it to be worth Bitcoin, or you want it to be, pay mom's utility bill in Belgium.
Is there something unique about how you guys have built your stablecoin that perhaps stands out from some of the others? I've heard that, it's a little more global, licensed, regulated. Can you talk a bit about sort of what you think stands out about your stablecoin solution?
Yes. So we're licensed in Malta, which is part of the EU. And it's similar to the license, for example, that crypto.com has. We got licensed for our stablecoin, and the architecture for that is we issue and we redeem our stablecoin, right? So that will not be freely floating on any exchange. And what it does is it allows us to look like, and we actually are almost like a digital gift card company, because we're issuing and redeeming both. And so that means when we walk into India, Papua New Guinea, Colombia, the US, Australia, etc., we can get fiat accounts that then have, if you will, really use our stablecoin, right? Which means we can get fiat on-ramps anywhere in the world. These 4 things are basically, you got to have these if you want to do an e-government, an e-bank, or literally a full society. Like, if you're missing any of these, you can't build a complex, growing, big economy. Taking those 4 elements, like literally this is what we're doing right now. We've got fiat on and off ramps coming in. We've partnered with FTX, for example, for actually doing different currencies and buying and selling crypto. And we did a bridge to Ethereum mainnet, where folks like Aave and Kyber and Uniswap, you can get to them, and vice versa. From some of those, you can get to us. We're in the process now of pulling those literally to our own chain, where then you get really fast, cheap L2, kind of like Matic, right? You can process these all on Everchain.
Okay.
Right. So net of it is like fiat in and out globally. We'll do 5-second transactions, like a penny or fraction of a penny per transaction. Integrating DeFi, so buy, sell, trade. You can send and receive crypto and fiat globally, like wherever we have an account, and the biometric wallet, right? So that means like you're not going to lose your keys. You're not going to have to remember that seed phrase. And literally no device is required. Like you could throw your phone in the ocean and still go back and get a new phone, or you go up to an agent, for example, like in the Philippines, we're testing this and have done this actually already in Indonesia. Users with the shirt on their back actually have, if you will, crypto wallets attached to their face.
Sorry, so they could essentially go into a place that has like a kiosk set up, and by reading their face, they can log in to their ID, get access to their data, basically, do banking stuff, borrow, lend, all that.
Exactly. And matter of fact, we rolled this out in 3 villages in Indonesia. And by villages, it was like 6,000 families. And we were delivering that stable coin, which we call a credit, which could only be redeemed for a gas tank. So for subsidy delivery, governments love this. Now we're adding a little bit of the UX, right? So we've got the functionality, the Rails work, but our UX honestly is not great right now. So we're in the process of adding this kind of a UX where people need to know like, hey, I can stake, I can send and receive, I can buy and sell, swap, right? We're adding, the fiat balances in there too. Ultimately, you can see by the title, the goal here is, what are we at? 2 million wallets, not even identities, that are doing DeFi. We're talking about how do you get to 100 million or 1 billion people? You've got to be able to make it this easy where it's like, I want to do 2 clicks from my checking account in and out of DeFi, right? Seamlessly. And right now it's just too hard. So we're trying to make that easy.
And from one single application too.
Yeah, exactly. We call it a super wallet, right? It's like I've got my euro and dollar accounts. I've got my crypto accounts. It's almost like the Netflix metaphor of what they did to video. It's like, no, this is about the user. The user wants to consume and do whatever they want with their video, however they want, right? Like kind of the same philosophy applies with money. It's like, I want all my accounts with my stocks, my crypto, my fiat money, my crypto money, all on my terms, like all of it.
Yeah, and I don't want to have to go to the video store to return the video. I don't want to have to go to the bank to get a bank draft to buy my car.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of those things, like as soon as you digitize all this and you start dealing with the licenses and you're like, okay, well, like clearly this is the future. Like this is where we all end up. Now, that's just banking or economics. Now, what we're doing is we're actually opening up our APIs. And this will be later on this year. It's literally, you can run insurance, health, government, like all, supply chain if you want it. And so we've made some announcements with, guys like Aave and ENS, Chainlink, where they're going to be consuming our APIs. They're like, okay, now they can start leveraging, if you will, this infrastructure. Here's where things get interesting. So we have a bridge to Ethereum mainnet right now. What we're adding is also other bridges to other mainnets. And you'll be able to do identity data pseudonymously with pseudonyms or with KYC or money or tokens, all sort of between those. And we're also working with a couple of the credit card companies to actually issue our own debit card. So I would call this, this is towards, Q3, Q4 of this year. We're going to be adding more bridges and obviously doing the debit card.
So you're essentially going to create a layer of identity that underpins potentially all of the DeFi, all of the dApps, all of the applications that run across multiple chains.
Yes. And so what that looks like, by the way, just to open it up even further, if you look at those bridges coming into Everest, then we will open up the Everchain and create nodes or let other people create nodes so that this is a permissionless Everchain. And if you will, right to your point, writing the identity using pseudonyms or whatever the law or social contract requires to actually then openly, transparently transfer value, with or without some level of identity.
Like a user can control exactly which part of their data gets shared and for how much time and to which entity.
Exactly.
All the smart contracts.
Yep. And so that's part of what we mentioned with, for example, Chainlink and ENS, both. It's as a user, I can go like, look, I'm going to do a health transaction, I want to share just my health records and my proof of address. They don't get to see my bank balance. And conversely, like I'm in the US and I want to go ahead and send $4,000 to the Philippines. Okay, well, I've got to reveal a certain amount of information just legally, but they don't, you don't have to reveal everything. And that's why I think there's going to be this happy medium we find of some identity verification, but still like put the user in control. Like if they don't want to do that social contract, whatever it is, they don't have to, they can stay private, but it's in their control.
In an age when privacy is being invaded on every other front, being sold and delivered as a free product when really you become the product. So the way you've described this to us today, it sounds like as a user, as a human, I could really be conducting pretty much all of my financial activities, even health related, government related, getting a new license, whatever that is, for say a driver's license. I could conduct that all through your app and all through my biometric sort of verification, which is based on my face. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's, you go back to where we modeled it from, Estonia, where you go like, what are the systems that plug into this? And to play out what you just said is in Estonia, they can do literally everything they want digitally except buy property. And that's because they're worried about the Russians.
Okay. And so my question then is, on the one side, having all of these services and options kind of distributed right now, where it's like, okay, I go to my bank, then I have to go here, then I have my investment company over here. It's slow. There's a lot of friction there. But on the one side, if one of those gets hacked or if one of those gets sort of accessed by a bad actor, it's like, okay, but that's one siloed part of my life. If my entire life exists on the EverWallet, on the ID app, then the security, the ability for me to keep that information safe, for it to be, that becomes of like absolute paramount level. So how, with the creation of the biometric ID, how can you ensure that there's just no way that somebody can get through that?
It's a really good question. So what we didn't show in that slide deck is there are literally 3 different chains in that system. The first one is, we call it the identity chain. And so your identity data is stored in, think of it like an IPFS array. So when we have 1 million users, it's 1 million mini data stores. It's not a database that's a honeypot.
Okay. Yep.
So that my use was like, okay, instantly, simply by distributed nature of it, it's not much of an attack vector. That is, you're gonna go try to hack and go like, I got into this one little piece that, by the way, I don't know if it was that woman in Sulawesi, Indonesia, who was getting an energy subsidy, or Bob's fingerprint, right? Like they don't know. The other piece is, once you, let's say, these are all distributed, each element in there. So like my biometrics, my proof of address, some of my credentials, think of it like layers of the onion, they're all encrypted with different locks. Third piece of this is Everest itself doesn't actually have the keys to open it up. So literally like at gunpoint, I couldn't go like, oh, I can open that user's identity data. Can't do it. The second piece of, or at least the second and third chain, and this one might, I think it answers your question directly. We're a regulated financial entity, right? And so if somebody transacts across us, we have to make sure it's legal. So if a government does come to us and they go like, what happened on this transaction? We have to, say, oh, this is what happened, which is a normal regulated financial entity. But it shows you like we'll have multiple, if you will, prongs to all those different providers. Like that way it's not one, if you get into one thing, you get all of it.
Like I'm just thinking, as a non-developer, non-technical guy, if this is entirely locked to my face, there's been some reports of things, like the face scan on certain phones being hijacked with 3D rendered and all this hacker, like advanced stuff that I don't understand. Is that something that you guys looked at? I mean, I've heard that the iPhone face scan has never been hacked, but maybe the Android has. Like, what do you see in the future as in terms of threats, and how are you mitigating?
So, one, it's always who you are and what you know. So it's never just a face.
Okay.
So by the way, we do face, and it's a live face. Right?
Okay.
You got to show liveness, like blink the eyes, etc.
Oh, good. Okay.
right? Then you have to have a PIN, right? So it's still like, even if they found a video of this and they try to like fake out the system, and they go like, great, we faked out the system, it's really live, Bob. They still have to know my PIN. Now, the second piece that we've done historically, and we'll probably be adding in over time, is literally a second biometric, right? So then it's like, okay, if you can steal Bob's live head and get what's inside of it, like my PIN, okay, like, yeah, you're now at, might as well go after Citibank, right?
Yeah. Like at that point, you could get to anyone, anywhere, in any way. Yeah. So you're as secure as the existing solutions, if not more.
Yeah, exactly. And like, when you go like, it's two forms of biometrics and a PIN, like we're safeguarding nuclear secrets at that point.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you walking me through that. Is there any other, key points that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, look, the thing that's probably worth mentioning is, people always ask, what's the functionality of the ID token, right? Because we do have a utility token, and with multiple legal opinions on that. And it's best described as like a membership or access. So that is, if a user wants to get access to the platform, like join the remittance crypto club, like, okay, that might be 5 or 10 ID tokens. Whereas if you're a bank, and we have lots of banks coming to us to go like, hey, please digitize us, make us look like Revolut and Chime. Right? Okay, well, they want more functionality over longer periods of time for 100,000 users doing complex smart contracts with eKYC. Okay, well, they have to buy 500,000 or 1 million ID tokens and stake those for access to our platform. And by our platform, I mean the community's platform, really. Like, if you look at the distribution of ID tokens, over half will end up being owned by the community. Won't be owned by the developer.
Really, it's not as much as like pay for gas, pay per use. It's more like buy, hold, stake to maintain access. And that includes the institutions and the users.
Correct. We say sometimes we get asked a lot of like, how do you compare with, on one hand, like Loop, Ring, or Matic? It's like, they do really good L2s. Right? We do an L2, but we also do identity with fiat onboarding around the world.
For those who don't know, like the global sort of, jurisdiction agnostic, if you will, feature is very much unique to what you guys have built. I believe there's only one other crypto company that has that Malta license. Do you want to talk a bit about the number of hoops that you had to jump through to get that? Why that stands out?
Sure. So look, back in 2018, Malta opened its doors to being a blockchain nation. About 150 or 200 companies showed up and said, we want to do this. And at the end, after about 3 years and a half, there are 8 that have in-principle licenses. The noteworthy one that we get compared to a lot is crypto.com.
That's the one I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, so like you can, it's pretty simple to compare and contrast. Like, okay, they've got the Visa going a couple months ahead of us. We can do literally what Ethereum or DOT or BSC does in terms of all the other functionality, right? Like to actually run a society, supply chain, and all these other. To go through that process, and I'll tell you, like I deal with regulators around the world. The MFSA in Malta is, by my estimation right now, the toughest and the smartest. It's a world-class, like in New York, there's a bit license, a singular thing. In Malta, there's 4 licenses, right? There's generic something, then there's basically like a payment company, then there's you're gonna trade on your own behalf, like a trading desk, and then there's a crypto exchange. Like there's 4 levels of this thing. And just to shake off, I think, some of their previous reputation, they're incredibly hard. They are tough, and like you get a license from them, like my hat's off to the other 7 guys that have done it, because it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's 8 in the world. So that's actually, when that news came out is when I said, hold on a sec. And I really went and kind of dove into what you guys have built. And it's more than just a credit card or an app. You guys have really built an entire chain, which can really then become a bit more of an ecosystem play. And as you said, is going to be linking to things like Solana, Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, Matic, potentially. DOT, another one that we love to talk about. Tell me about your relationship with FTX. I love FTX. I love SBF. Maybe, put a little color into your relationship with SBF, the man, the myth, the legend.
Sure. I mean, look, this is probably a cultural thing with my co-founder Brad and I. Like, we're pretty low key. I mean, look, the reason I got pulled into all of blockchain, coming out of, I was a general manager at BitTorrent, got pulled into a fund, an accelerator in Singapore with, it was Vitalik and Aya. And it was like, okay, you sit down and you go deep with Vitalik on floating point and why that matters with bit error rates for what he's describing, like you buying ETH at $8, et cetera, back in 2017. Like, okay, like we just don't, I say this of like, we don't really like to play that card. Like, we've been pretty, we're pretty humble about that stuff. Like, okay, FTX, like, I really like them. I mean, like, they're just fantastic. And I don't say this, like, everything they say they do, they do. And that's everything for me. Like, I don't want to overhype the relationship, but I think they've got the best exchange I've seen. They've got the best team running around. If you had to pick somebody 6 months or a year ago that goes like, who's just literally got their finger on the pulse of what's supposed to be built, when it's supposed to be built, and then actually delivering it. We keep the vast majority of our treasury there, earning interest on exactly everything they do. Like, I think they're probably playing the highest level game in the whole industry right now.
What are you the most excited about that's sort of on the cusp right now?
So there's one or two things you're going to see from us relative to bridging to traditional finance and bringing them into this new world. And I'll give you an example metaphorically. Like, Paxos is doing good infrastructure and they're licensed in New York, so they can supply things for Americans. But as you pointed out, like, we can do this globally. We can do this globally for lots of banks.
Okay.
And so you'll see some announcements from us where, we're going to help banks and other partners around the world start dipping their toe in, just like PayPal worked with them to do their thing. And that'll be coming shortly.
Well, that's something to look forward to. I know there is a lot of people in my circles that are really excited about what you guys have built. Myself personally, very excited to see what you guys are building over there. And I appreciate you coming over today to chat. Hopefully we can do a follow-up a little later, maybe in the summer Q4. And what's next?
July, August, I want to see you test it live, like with the new UX and everything running on L2. Like, that's going to be kind of the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, no, I'll be here and we'll be ready to test it out live with you in July or August.
Awesome. All right, guys. All right. Thanks so much.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Everything you need to know about Everest ID. If you haven't already and you like what we put out here today, please feel free to hit the like, the sub, and the notification bell so you can see when these things go live in action at the moment they happen. Have a wonderful day, and whatever you do, always play from a position of strength. Take care.